In the previous video, we've created the select pagination view test where we were using certain elements over and over again, basically creating a lot of duplication. Things like, for instance, uncle tag here with the class button with a specific href associated. Obviously, they may differ between the tests, but most of this string is pretty much the same throughout all these tests. So rather than having it this way, let's do some refactoring and make it a little bit better. So what I'm going to start with is to open basically this test case class, and what we are going to add right before this trim white space method is the property protected one base URL, and we're going to set it to http://localhost. So this is going to be our base URL. So whatever URL we are calling, this is the beginning of what we're going to get. Okay, after our method trim white space, we are going to create the method with the same name. So protected function base URL, and this one will take an argument called slash, and it's going to have a Boolean value associated with it. By default, it's going to be false. And what we're going to use it with is simply we are going to either add / at the end or not. So return, and we check if slash is true, then this base URL property concatenated with the /, otherwise colon this base URL property. So let's just add some block and get base URL with or without the slash. Okay, and the next method we're going to have within this test case, and I'm adding this to the test case, main test case, because all our tests are extending this class in one way or the other, so that we can access these methods actually from any of these tests. Protected function URL with query, and we're going to take two arguments. First one will be of the array type query. The second one will be slash, and it's going to be Boolean value again. By default, we'll set it to false. There we go. That's better. And if I scroll up a little bit, and here I'm going to return this base URL. We pass the slash through as an argument, and then we concatenate it with the question mark and HTTP build query function when we are passing our query. And if you want to check obviously what this HTTP build query function does, please visit php.net. It basically converts array to the query string for the URL. So that's our URL with query. If we now add some doc blocks as well here, get URL with the query string. Okay, and we can now save this test case and close it. The next thing we need to do is go to our pagination case, and here what I'm going to do is add two helper methods, one for the button, so it's going to return the string representing the anchor tag with the class button, the other one option with either selected attribute or not. So we're going to start with public function called button, and it's going to take array query and then slash false by default. And here we're going to return anchor tag with href. We concatenate this URL with query, we pass the query through, then slash through as well, concatenate it with closing double quote class button. And I'm going to close the file browser on the left so you can see things better. As you can see, this is the entire structure. So this is the URL, which is going to go for the href attribute and then class button, because that's all we have for these buttons within our pagination. Let's add some doc blocks here, and we're going to say get anchor tag with button class. So that's our button. Now another helper class method that I want to add here is going to be called option. So public function option, it will take same arguments plus an additional one. So query, then slash equals false by default, and then select it, whether it should be selected or not. By default is going to be false. So we go for option variable, and we start with option value, and we concatenate it with, again, this URL with query, pass query, then we plus slash, concatenate it with double quote in between a set of single quotes, option, we concatenate it we're going to concatenate it with, we check if selected, actually it should be select it, probably better. Selected is true, then add attribute selected, otherwise null, then we concatenate it again with the closing option tag, closing right angle tag basically. So return option, and that's our option method. If we now just quickly add some dog blocks as well, get option tag. So these two methods are going to make it a little bit easier for us to do all these assertions. We will be replacing them now, so you'll see when we can actually use it and how we can actually use them. Okay, so we have option and button, save it, close it, and let's start with our select pagination view test. If we scroll out to the top, the first test that uses these options is here. This returns correct HTML structure on the first page. So we're going to start, we have a button here, so we're going to go for this button, and we go for the query. Query will be page equals 1. As you can see here, and it doesn't have a slash, so false for the second one, second attribute, which is false by default anyway, so we don't have to provide a second argument. If we remove it, let's run this test quickly as well. There we go, and everything passes, so that's great. So that works fine. Let's do the same for the second assertion here. Assert contains this with the page 2 here, so we need to change it to 2. And again, no slash here because we didn't specify any get super global parameters. So remove it. We've now replaced this. Now for the other one, for these options, we're going to use this option. We're going to pass for the query. It's going to be page equals 1, because as you can see, this query string here has page 1. And again, there's no slash at the end, so no second argument. And we want this one to be selected actually. So we're going to provide the second argument false, and then third one is going to be true because we want selected attribute to be present. So that's how we're going to deal with this one. Okay, I'm going to copy this this entire line, paste it for this assert contains the last one within this test. This time page is 2. Let's remove this and remove the second and third argument because it shouldn't be selected and shouldn't have any slash. So that should all work fine. If we go back to the terminal, run it, and all still works exactly the same way as before. So let's do the same thing for the other tests. This time we are using get super global. So what we are going to do here for this button is going to be button. We pass query, it's going to be page. This time the page number is 9. And yes, we want the slash because we are using super global here, so because there is a query string in other words. So that should work. Then for the second one, we only want the URL. So we're going to use this URL with query page equals 11. That's the only thing that we need here. And yes, we want the slash, so true as well. Then comma here. Then for assert contains here, we've got the options. So this option, query, we have page 10. And yes, we want the slash, true, semicolon, and it is selected here. As you can see, we've got this attribute, so the third argument set to true as well. And then next one for this option, so this option, we have query string, this time page is 9, and true for the slash, but false for the selected attribute, so we don't need this third argument. Now we check in this page between first and last. For the first one, it's going to be a button, page is 4, true for the forward slash, again because we're using this page query string within the query string. Same actually here we've got the options, so let's go for this option, query string, this time page is 4, and yes, we want this forward slash. Let's remove this. This time same thing, this option page is 5 this time, true for the slash and true for selected. Next one is again option, this option page 6 this time, true for slash but non-selected, so we leave third argument as false by default. Then a button, page 6 this time, true for slash, And the last thing is just this URL with query page should be 11. And that's all replaced. Now if we run a test again, there we go, 7 tests, 18 assertions, all of which are passing. So that's great. So we've refactored this select pagination view test class. So we can now save it and close it, but we're using this pagination test. As you can see, we have these URLs here, so we can probably refactor this as well. Let's scroll right to the top and go from the top. Where do we start using these URLs? It starts with the test here, returns page URL. So we're going to replace it with this URL with query. It's going to be page equals 9. And let's remove this previous string. And I'm just going to copy this line. For the next one, returns previous page URL, page 2 here. Remove it. And next current page URL is going to be page 3. And then the last one was 4, so let's just replace it 4, and let's run this test again. This time, rather than select pagination view, it's the pagination test. So pagination test. And we have one problem here, and this is with the returns previous page URL. Let's quickly have a look at that. Previous page URL, of course, because we have page in a query string, so we need to make sure that this slash is present. So true for this one. If we scroll down, the same is going to apply to this current page URL. So true as the second argument. And same for this last method, this next page URL, we need the slash, so true. Let's run the test again. And now everything passes. Okay, so our tests are now refactored and we can move to the next video.